You feel it long before you name it. That quiet repetition in your life. That strange sense that certain people move in circles around you, as if the universe keeps placing the same face in a new body, the same lesson in a different story, the same longing wrapped in another pair of hands. You try to move forward, yet something pulls you back. You try to choose differently, yet your feet follow a familiar path. And in the silence of an ordinary night, when the world finally stops demanding your attention, you wonder why the same pattern keeps finding you. It is subtle at first, a sense of recognition that feels like déjà vu. You meet someone, and their presence lands in you like a memory. Their voice stirs something unfinished. Their absence wounds you in the same place as before. You tell yourself it is coincidence or fate or simply bad luck, but a deeper part of you knows that life is not careless with its repetitions. Life speaks in echoes. Life speaks in mirrors. Life speaks through the people who enter, stay, and break you open. There are moments when you feel as if you are walking through a forest of old versions of yourself. Every tree holds a shadow of who you have been. Every branch whispers what you still avoid. You keep meeting the same emotional charge, the same argument, the same disappointment, and although the faces shift, the story underneath remains unchanged. It is as if life waits for you at the same turning point, again and again, asking you to look at what you quickly pass by. You might think you are choosing freely, yet something beneath the surface chooses for you. Something ancient, something forgotten, something that still hurts. You feel the pull toward familiar chaos. You feel the warmth of familiar affection. You feel the ache of familiar endings. And each time you say you will do better, but the unconscious moves quietly, like a river that always finds its way back to the sea. Perhaps you wonder if you are cursed with a certain type of relationship, a certain type of love, a certain type of heartbreak. But what if this repetition is not punishment? What if it is guidance? What if the pattern is not there to trap you, but to reveal you? Each person who arrives carries a fragment of the same lesson. Each encounter is a door. Each disappointment is a mirror. Each reunion with the same emotional landscape is life telling you that something inside you is still waiting to be seen. You feel the discomfort rising when you think about this possibility. You feel the tension between what you want and what you fear. You feel the trembling in the quiet space between your ribs where an old wound still breathes. And yet, beneath it all, something calls your name. Something patient. Something wise. Something that has watched you repeat the same circle for years. You know that the pattern has followed you long enough. And somewhere inside, a gentle voice whispers that the reason it keeps returning is simple. You have not yet turned toward the place where the pattern begins, and that is where the real journey opens. There is a moment in every inner journey when you begin to sense that life is not linear at all. It moves in spirals. It brings you back to what you avoided. It returns you to what you suppressed. It repeats the emotional truth you have not yet claimed. You walk through the world believing you are meeting new people, yet each one carries a familiar scent of something unresolved. It is as if the unconscious arranges your encounters with the precision of a hidden architect, guiding you toward the places where your soul still trembles. You feel this especially in relationships. You meet someone, and the connection awakens like a flame. It warms you with a feeling that seems ancient, as if you have known them before. This warmth is not an accident. It is recognition. The unconscious recognizes what the ego has forgotten. You do not fall into patterns because you are weak. You fall into them because they speak the language of your earliest wounds. They echo the first truths that shaped your heart. And until you bring that echo into awareness, life will continue to send you people who speak with the same emotional tone. Imagine yourself standing before a mirror that reflects not your face, but your inner landscape. Your fears, your desires, your unmet needs, your abandoned parts. Every person who leaves a mark on you carries some of these reflections. They do not arrive randomly. They arrive because they resonate with what you still carry. They enter your life like symbols from a dream, each holding a shard of meaning. Some appear to love you, others appear to wound you, but all of them reveal the same hidden pattern. The pattern is not in the world, it is in you. When this pattern takes shape, it often feels like a forest at dusk. You walk through it without a map, seeing only shadows between the trees. You sense that something is approaching you again, something you have met before. The forest does not change until you learn to see in the dark. The trees do not move until you learn to stop running. What repeats is not the person, but the emotional imprint you carry. The face changes, the story changes, yet the same ache settles in your chest. The same longing rises in your throat. The same silence grows between breaths. You try to tell yourself that you are simply unlucky in love, or that the world is filled with the wrong people. Yet a deeper wisdom whispers that the unconscious always chooses what is familiar. The familiar feels safe, even when it hurts. The familiar feels like home, even when it breaks you. And so you walk in circles, thinking you are exploring new ground while tracing old steps. This is how the unconscious teaches. Not through words, but through repetition. Not through explanation, but through experience. Some relationships feel like rivers. They pull you toward them with a force you cannot resist. You enter the current and let it carry you. You believe the river is new, but somewhere downstream you realize you have been here before. The same temptation, the same hope, the same fear, the same drowning. If you look closely, you see that the river flows from within you. The other person is only the surface. What moves beneath is your own depth. There is fire in this pattern too. The fire of projection, the fire of desire, the fire of the shadow. When you meet someone who ignites something in you, their flame is fueled by your own inner tinder. You see in them what you have not yet seen in yourself. You love them for what you long to become. You fear them for what you long to avoid. You cling to them because they awaken a forgotten dream. You lose them because the dream collapses when reality touches it. And then life sends another flame, another chance to understand the fire inside you. Even the night participates in this design. The night is where old stories rise. The night is where memories breathe. When you lie awake wondering why you keep choosing the same kinds of people, the night whispers the truth. You choose what you do not yet understand. You choose what feels like the beginning of something you lost. You choose the faces that resemble the unresolved. Until you turn inward, the night will continue to send its symbols through the people you meet. And then there is the symbol of the door. You stand before it many times. Some people push you toward it. Some hold you back from it. Some appear only to show you where the door actually is. This door leads to the pattern itself. It leads to the childhood memory that built your longing. It leads to the fear that shaped your choices. It leads to the wound that keeps calling partners who resemble the past. Life sends you the same person because you have not yet walked through this door. When you finally open it, the air inside is heavy, yet pure. It is the air of truth. It is the air of your own forgotten story. And only then do you realize that no one was repeating in your life. You were repeating yourself. You were meeting the same emotion, the same expectation, the same unfinished chapter. The people were only mirrors, each one showing you a different angle of the same inner shape. This realization does not come as lightning. It comes like dawn, slowly, quietly. You notice the light shifting between the trees. You feel a new breath entering your chest. You sense that something in you is ready to change. And as this dawn rises, you understand that the pattern is not your enemy. It is your guide. It stays until you learn to see. It repeats until you learn to choose. It returns until you return to yourself. And when you begin to grasp this truth, a new path opens beneath your feet. A path that leads deeper. A path that leads inward. A path that calls you toward the place where the pattern ends and your soul begins. There comes a moment when the repetition becomes too clear to ignore. You feel it in your body first. A quiet tightening in your chest when you recognize the same emotional script unfolding. A familiar rush of hope. A familiar tremor of fear. The subtle awareness that you have stepped into a story you already know by heart. You try to tell yourself that this time is different, but your breath betrays you. Something inside whispers that you have walked into this room before. It begins with sensation, the warmth of connection, the spark of recognition, the way your heartbeat shifts when someone's presence mirrors an old longing. You do not choose these sensations consciously. They rise from deeper soil. They rise from memories the mind has forgotten, but the body remembers with perfect clarity. You lean toward the familiar because it feels safe, almost sacred, even when it carries the same ache you once tried to escape. This is the unconscious speaking through emotion. This is the quiet compass of your earliest wounds. You notice small details repeating themselves. The tone of their voice, the rhythm of their silence, the way conflict appears in the same shape, no matter who stands in front of you. You tell yourself you will respond differently this time, but something inside moves first, as if rehearsed. You get pulled back into the old dynamic. The same argument with a new face. The same fear dressed in fresh clothes. The same story reenacted under a different sky. When you step back and observe this pattern, it feels like walking through a temple built long before you were conscious. Each column represents an old belief. Each doorway opens to a forgotten memory. Each shadow holds an emotion you once pushed aside. The people who enter your life walk through this temple with you. They touch the same pillars. They open the same doors. They awaken the same shadows. And you respond to them not as they are, but as symbols of the architecture inside you. There is a river flowing beneath all of this. A river of instinct and memory. It carries you towards certain people with a force you cannot explain. You feel drawn to them not because of who they are, but because of who they represent within you. They embody an emotional truth you have not yet faced. They carry the fragrance of something familiar, something unfinished. You step into their current, believing it is love or destiny, but it is your own unconscious pulling you toward the place where the pattern wants to be healed. This is where the shadow quietly enters, not as darkness, but as invitation. The shadow is everything you have not yet owned in yourself. Every fear that shaped your relationships, every desire you learned to silence, every abandonment you still carry in the softest part of your heart. When someone awakens your shadow, you see them through the lens of your own unclaimed story. You love them for what you lack. You fear them for what you hide. You become attached to them because they awaken the wound that shaped you. And when the pattern reveals itself fully, it feels like fire. Not destructive fire, but alchemical fire. A fire that burns away illusions. A fire that forces you to see beyond surface attraction. A fire that illuminates the hidden threads connecting each relationship you have ever called love. This fire does not come to harm you. It comes to show you the truth. It comes to purify the old narrative that keeps returning in new forms. As you watch the flames rise, you begin to understand why life keeps sending the same person in different bodies. It is not a curse. It is not fate playing tricks. It is your psyche calling you home, calling you to break the cycle, calling you to see the source of the pattern instead of its reflections. You realize that every repeated story points toward the same doorway, the doorway of awareness, the doorway of choice, the doorway that leads back to the origin of your longing. Something in you softens here. You start to breathe differently. You feel the tension loosening. You sense that you are no longer trapped in the pattern. You are observing it. You are standing at its edge, watching its shape, listening to what it has been trying to tell you for years. And slowly, with a quiet certainty, you begin to recognize that the pattern was never about the other person. It was about something in you asking to be seen at last. And this is where the next layer begins to unfold. There is a moment when the repetition stops being an accident and begins to feel like a message. You sense it in the way your emotions rise in familiar waves. You sense it in the way your reactions unfold, as if scripted by a memory you never consciously wrote. You sense it in the quiet recognition that the person in front of you is not new at all. They carry the voice of someone from your past. They carry the silence of someone you once longed for. They carry the wound that shaped your earliest understanding of love. You begin to notice how quickly you assign meaning, how quickly you project, how quickly you fill the spaces between their words with your own story. You do not do this intentionally. The unconscious moves faster than thought. It paints the world with the colors of your inner landscape. Every emotion becomes a brushstroke. Every memory becomes a filter. Every unresolved longing becomes a lens. And before you even realize it, you are no longer relating to the person standing before you. You are relating to a figure shaped by your past. This is the power of projection. It is the psyche's way of bringing the unseen into the light. You project what you have not integrated. You project what you have not understood. You project the qualities you admire and the flaws you fear. The other becomes a mirror. Their eyes reflect your forgotten desires. Their presence awakens your abandoned needs. Their distance triggers your old wounds. And without noticing, you step into the same emotional pattern that has followed you through the years. In these moments, the world feels like a dream in which every symbol points back to you. The people who attract you are not random. They resonate with something deep inside. They remind you of a tenderness you once lost. They remind you of a rejection you never processed. They remind you of a love you once tasted but could not keep. And so you keep reaching for them, hoping that this time the story will end differently, hoping that this time the familiar ache will heal instead of deepen. Yet the ache returns. It returns because the story is not asking to be repeated. It is asking to be understood. The ache rises like mist in a forest at dawn, soft, quiet, persistent. It shows you the shape of your longing. It shows you the places where your heart still hesitates. It shows you the fears that keep pulling you toward the same kind of partner. The ache is not a flaw in your ability to love. It is a map that points directly to the wound that first taught you what love feels like. If you trace the ache back to its source, you begin to see the inner child standing behind the pattern. Innocent, hopeful, afraid. This child learned to love in incomplete ways. They learned that affection must be earned. They learned that attention is unpredictable. They learned that leaving is always an option. And these lessons became the foundation of your adult relationships. You repeat them not because you choose to, but because you never learned another way. The people who enter your life walk directly into this inner landscape. They step into the emotional imprint left behind by your earliest attachments. You see them through the eyes of the child you once were. You respond with the same strategies. You cling. You retreat. You idealize. You fear. You recreate the same dance, hoping to rewrite the ending. This is not weakness. This is the psyche attempting to heal by reenacting what hurt you. But there is a moment when the reenactment becomes unbearable. You feel the weight of the pattern pressing on your chest. You see the cycle unfolding with painful clarity, and instead of running, you pause. This pause is the turning point. It is the moment when consciousness enters the pattern. It is the moment when the dream begins to shift. In this pause, you recognize that the other person is not the source of the pain. They are the surface. The source lies deeper. The source lies within. This recognition feels like light touching the forest floor. Soft, warm, revealing. You begin to understand that the repetition is an invitation. Life is not trapping you. Life is guiding you. The pattern appears not to punish you, but to awaken you. Each encounter is an opportunity to see the wound more clearly. Each attraction is a compass pointing toward what still needs your attention. Each heartbreak is a reminder that something inside you longs for resolution. As you stand in this light, you feel a quiet shift within your chest. A sense that the cycle is not as solid as it once seemed. A sense that you can look at the pattern without collapsing into it. And from this new place, you begin to sense the possibility of a different story. A story that begins not with longing, but with awareness. A story that unfolds not from the past, but from the self. And slowly, the next chapter of the journey begins to rise within you. There comes a quiet evening when you sit with yourself long enough to feel the truth beneath all the repetitions. You sense that the familiar pull towards certain people is not destiny. It is memory. It is the echo of an emotional imprint formed long before you were old enough to understand its weight. You begin to see that the pattern has never been about them. It has always been about you. And as this realization settles, something inside shifts like a door unlocking from within. You start to notice how your body speaks before your mind does. How your shoulders tighten around the same type of silence. How your breath shortens in the presence of the same emotional distance. How your chest opens with a hope that feels both ancient and fragile. These sensations do not lie. They are the language of your unconscious. They reveal the parts of you that are still searching for something that once felt missing. Every repeated attraction is the psyche calling you back to the place where the original wound still breathes. When you look deeper, the pattern reveals a forest of old beliefs. Some were formed in childhood, in moments too quiet to remember. Some were shaped by early heartbreak, when you gave more than you received. Some were carved by loneliness, teaching you to chase after anyone who offered warmth. These beliefs became the roots of your relational patterns. They grew silently. They grew invisibly. They grew into the choices you now call fate. The forest is dense, but not hostile. If you walk slowly, you begin to see paths that were always there. You notice how each relationship illuminated a different tree. One showed you your fear of abandonment. Another revealed your discomfort with being truly seen. Another made you confront the parts of yourself you keep hidden. None of them were mistakes. They were mirrors. They were teachers. They guided you toward the roots buried deep beneath the soil. There is a river running through this forest. A river that reflects your inner world with perfect honesty. When you meet someone who carries the same emotional energy as a past love, you see their reflection ripple on the water. At first, you think you are drawn to them because of who they are. But the river shows the truth. You are drawn to them because they resonate with a part of you that still seeks healing. They stir the waters of your own unresolved story. They touch the wound you thought time had buried. When this awareness dawns, it feels like stepping into a hidden temple. A place inside you that has waited patiently for your return. Flames glow softly along the walls, illuminating symbols carved by your experiences. Every symbol represents a lesson you have lived, but not yet integrated. Every flame lights the truth you once feared to see. In this temple, you begin to realize that you are not doomed to repeat the pattern. You have simply been walking through it unconsciously. And here, in this sacred space, you encounter the deeper truth. You attract the same type of person because a part of you believes that healing will come from recreating the original story. The unconscious tries to complete the cycle. It hopes that if the same dynamic appears again, you will finally choose differently. You will finally speak your truth. You will finally stand firm. You will finally love yourself enough not to shrink. This is why the pattern returns. Not to trap you, but to offer you another chance to rewrite the ending. The realization blooms slowly, like dawn spreading through a quiet valley. You see that every repeated story has been preparing you for this moment. For awareness, for clarity, for transformation. You begin to feel the ground beneath your feet for the first time. Solid, steady, real. You sense that you are no longer inside the pattern. You are observing it. You are naming it. You are stepping out of the unconscious river and standing on the shore of your own life. And as you breathe into this new awareness, you understand something profound. The pattern ends the moment you stop looking outward for what was wounded inward. The moment you stop asking another person to rescue the parts of you that were abandoned long ago. The moment you see that healing will not come from repeating the past, but from integrating it. This understanding does not close the journey. It opens it. It invites the next movement of your soul. A movement that carries you beyond repetition and into the possibility of a new way of loving. A way that begins with the self. A way that moves with awareness. A way that returns you to your own center before you reach for another. And from this center, the path toward transcendence begins to rise. There is a moment when the pattern no longer feels like a loop. It feels like a path that has always been guiding you inward, a path lined with the fragments of every love you have ever held, a path illuminated by the soft glow of the insights you resisted for years. As you walk, something inside you begins to steady. The ache softens, the longing quiets, the confusion dissolves into clarity. You sense that the repetition was never life punishing you. It was life preparing you. You begin to see each relationship as a chapter in a larger story. A story that was never about finding the right person, but about becoming the right self. Every heartbreak carved a space inside you that could hold more truth. Every disappointment peeled away a layer of illusion. Every reunion with a familiar pattern brought you closer to the wound you needed to face. It was not chaos. It was choreography, a silent dance between your conscious self and the deeper intelligence within you. The symbols that once felt scattered now begin to form a map. You see the forest differently. The shadows no longer frighten you, because you understand that they were your own unvisited rooms. The trees no longer confuse you, because you see the beliefs that shaped them. The river no longer pulls you blindly, because you understand its currents. The water reflects your face with a clarity that once felt impossible. You are not lost. You are awakening. Light begins to seep into the spaces that once felt closed. It spreads like dawn across the landscape of your inner world. Soft, gentle, patient. You feel it in your chest, where old fear once lived. You feel it in your throat, where silence once held your truth hostage. You feel it in your belly, where anxiety once curled like a fist. The light does not erase the past. It integrates it. It allows you to see that the wound is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your becoming. You start to notice that your choices rise from a new place. Not from longing, but from clarity. Not from fear, but from awareness. Not from old wounds, but from your own grounded center. The pattern weakens because you no longer feed it with unconscious desire. You observe it with compassion instead of judgment. You recognize its shape without merging with it. And in this recognition, you reclaim your power to choose differently. There is a fire burning within you, but it is no longer the fire of projection or longing. It is the fire of transformation, an alchemical flame that melts the old patterns and reveals the self underneath. You feel yourself changing in ways you cannot fully articulate. You speak differently. You breathe differently. You love differently. You are no longer reaching for someone to complete you. You are reaching inward, discovering the parts of you that were waiting to be embraced. The dreamlike quality of your relationships begins to shift. The people you once attracted lose their magnetism when you no longer resonate with the wound they matched. The dynamic you once repeated feels foreign, almost distant. The stories you once lived no longer pull you in. You see them clearly, as if watching from outside the dream. You begin to understand that breaking the pattern does not require force. It requires awareness. Once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. A sense of peace begins to rise within you. Slow, steady, real. It moves through your body like warm air after a long night. You feel it in the way you forgive yourself for the choices you made. You feel it in the way you begin to trust your own timing. You feel it in the way your heart opens without collapsing into old ache. Peace becomes the new rhythm of your inner world. Not because life has changed, but because you have. As this peace deepens, you realize that life has been speaking to you through the people you loved, through the ones who stayed, through the ones who left, through the ones who broke you, through the ones you broke. All of them were parts of the same message. All of them were chapters in the same teaching. Life kept sending the same person because you had not yet found the part of yourself they represented. Now you can see it. Now you can hold it. Now you can heal it. The temple inside you glows brighter. You walk through it with a sense of reverence. The symbols on the walls no longer confuse you. They feel like memories of who you have always been. The flames flicker softly, as if bowing to your newfound awareness. The air feels different, no longer heavy with unspoken truths. It feels spacious. It feels alive. It feels like home. You begin to understand that this temple has always been yours. You only needed to return. And now, standing in this sacred space, you sense the quiet truth beneath all the repetition. You were never meant to heal by finding someone who fit the wound. You were meant to heal by meeting yourself. Fully, tenderly, honestly. You feel this truth settling into your bones, into your breath, into your being. It touches you like warm light at dawn. It holds you like a quiet river. It breathes through you like the forest after rain. The journey does not end here. It unfolds. It expands. It invites you deeper into the quiet communion with your own soul. And as this awareness settles, you feel yourself crossing into a new way of living. A way guided not by patterns, but by presence. A way shaped not by longing, but by love. A way grounded in the self you have finally begun to meet. And from this place of inner truth, the final movement begins to rise. There is a softness that arrives when the pattern finally dissolves. It does not come as triumph. It comes as a gentle exhale, a release you barely notice at first. You feel lighter without knowing why. You feel clearer without forcing understanding. You feel present, as if the past has loosened its grip on your chest. This is what happens when you stop searching for healing in someone else and begin to meet the place inside you where the wound was born. You walk through your days with a different kind of awareness now. You notice the moments when your heart opens and the moments when it tenses. You observe your reactions with kindness. You listen to your emotions without fear. You let your inner world speak without silencing it. There is no rush, no strain, no urgency to prove anything. You simply exist in a quieter rhythm, a rhythm shaped by your own truth rather than your old ache. The people who enter your life feel different too. Not because they have changed, but because you have. You see them without the fog of projection. You listen without anticipating loss. You allow connection without surrendering your center. You no longer chase familiar pain, and because of that, familiar pain no longer chases you. You meet others from the fullness of who you are becoming, not the emptiness of what you once lacked. And yet, the greatest shift happens privately, in the silent moments when you sit with yourself. You sense that you are no longer waiting for someone to rescue you from your own story. You are no longer searching for a reflection to confirm your worth. You are no longer repeating the past, hoping it will rewrite itself. You stand with yourself now. You hold your own gaze. You breathe into your own presence. This is the quiet miracle the pattern was always leading you toward. You realize that healing is not a sudden awakening. It is a slow return, a return to the parts of you that were forgotten, a return to the emotions you once pushed aside, a return to the child who learned to love in incomplete ways. You meet this child gently. You listen. You heal by giving them what they never received. Space, safety, understanding, warmth. This meeting changes everything. It is the moment the cycle loses its power. It is the moment your story begins again. Life still brings people your way, but now you meet them with open eyes. You see what is yours and what is theirs. You feel the difference between longing and resonance. You sense when your heart is guiding you and when your wound is speaking. You honor both, but you follow the path that keeps you whole. This is the quiet mastery that emerges from the work you have done. A mastery that does not shout. A mastery that breathes. And as you walk forward, you carry a new understanding in your chest. Life does not punish. Life repeats until you listen. Life does not trap. Life guides until you awaken. Life does not send the same person to hurt you. Life sends the same lesson in different forms until you meet the part of yourself that needed healing. Once you meet that part, the repetition ends. The path opens, and a new way of loving becomes possible. So in the days ahead, watch your own heart gently. Notice the subtle movements of your inner world. Let your breath guide you back when you drift. Let your awareness soften the places that still hold fear. Let your presence become the home you always sought in others. Healing is not a destination. It is a companionship with yourself. One breath at a time. And as you rest in this truth, feel the quiet peace settling in your chest. A peace that does not depend on anyone else. A peace that rises from within like light returning at dawn. A peace that whispers softly that you are finally meeting yourself.